Let's pause for a moment so we can share some exciting news. We're proud to announce that our work here at Bring Back the Porch is getting noticed. From October to the end of January, our videos and reels viewed more than 1 million times. Some of those viewers could be your customers, so sponsoring Bring Back the Porch is a great way to get your message in front of them too. If you'd like to support our work here at Bring Back the Porch, we ask you to go to our website at bringbacktheporch.com and follow the links. Thank you for your support.
I was thinking before we got on, I love the idea of a porch. I grew up in Edmonton. We didn't have a porch. I guess we had a deck at the back, but not a porch at the front. But the spirit of the porch, to me, is very much the spirit of slow, in a sense, because the whole point of a porch, you don't rush on a porch, right? The porch is not somewhere where you worry about productivity or optimizing your experience on the porch. The porch is where you stop being a human doing and become a human being, right?
This episode of Bring Back the Porch brought to you by Bernie Leahy, River Street Realty. Let's get you home. I had the good fortune of attending a presentation from today's guest, Carl Honoré, back in Medicine Hat in February. It was very enlightening. The movement itself, the slow movement that you, I guess, first wrote about in 2004, is slowly catching on, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's happened in the interim. You started this in 2004. That seems like a long time ago. You've written several books since then. Where are we today?
I think that the slow revolution, if you want to call it that, it has been growing slowly, but more recently it's been growing quickly. I think that as the world gets faster and every moment of the day begins to feel like a race against the clock, even for children, we're bumping up against the limits of what we can take in terms of speed. And so the counter current for slowness is growing and growing fast. So you're seeing more and more movements, more and more people of all ages looking for ways to dial it down, to do things well instead of quickly.
I think you recently updated that first book as well, with a sort of, a second edition.
Yeah, I constantly updating it with sort of new forwards and so on, but I'm actually thinking now of writing a whole new book about slow, because I just feel like everything has moved on in a quantum leap sort of fashion with AI and stuff, that it's maybe time to take another step back and dive deep into the whole question of pace, speed, slowness in the 21st century.
AI, that's a dirty word right now, AI, because it seems like it is moving faster and faster, and a lot of people are beginning to worry about what that is going to do to our way of life. Is it going to give us more time because we won't have to do a lot of things that the machines are going to take over and do for us?
You're asking me if I have a crystal ball, and the short answer is no. I don't think even the people who are building the AI know where it's going to take us. It feels like it could be a tectonic shift. The optimistic view is that it takes off our backs a lot of menial work and then frees us up to slow down and to enjoy our lives more fully. That's maybe slightly too optimistic, because it's threatening to take over cognitive work, thinking work, intellectual and creative work as well. And if you take that away from human beings, I'm kind of not sure what's left. I don't know. I think there are a lot of big seismic questions we need to wrestle with at the moment, and I worry that we're not wrestling with them. On the contrary, the AI industry in particular is just putting its head down and going faster and faster and faster. They're not interested in pushing pause and asking big questions such as why? What is this AI for?
Is this a good
what
idea?
is the best version of it, right? They just simply want to get it out the door and get to whatever they imagine to be the finish line first. And that historically has ended badly. So I'm a natural optimist, but I'm feeling some tangs of worry here as we move hurtling towards whatever this finish line is going to be with AI.
Let's go back in time to the moment when you realized that you needed to slow down. I think you were in your son's bedroom and you were trying to give him the Reader's Digest version of a fairy tale.
I was so fast that my version of Snow White had 3 dwarves, right? So, my son would be like, "What happened to Grumpy?" And the moment I realized that I just lost my mind, my compass, was when I caught myself flirting with buying a book I'd heard about called The 1 Minute Bedtime Story. So Snow White in 60 Seconds. And when I heard about this book, my first thought was literally, hallelujah. get me that book now from Amazon, drone delivery. But then thankfully a second reaction kicked in, and it was one of those light bulb overhead moments. And I thought to myself, whoa, what am I doing here? I am racing through my life instead of living it. And that was me hitting rock bottom and realizing that I had to relearn the lost art of slowing down. I had to reconnect with my inner tortoise, if you like. And that thankfully turned my life around and gave me my life's work, if you like, right? Because it launched me to becoming the global spokesman, I suppose, the pioneer of this whole slow movement, which is kind of funny if you look back to who I was before, because I'm a naturally fast person. I kind of come from a road runner background. So to find myself now traveling around the world telling everyone how wonderful it is to slow down, even now it seems kind of funny to me.
Well, as journalists, we always face deadlines. We're always up against the clock. So we've got to do things quickly, get it out of the way, and move on to the next thing. So we are, I guess, conditioned from the time we pick up that first pen or hover over the keyboard to get it done and get it done now.
Yeah. The trouble, of course, is, and it's other professions have similar pressures to hit the deadline and get it all done by a certain time. That's okay up to a point in the workplace, but the trouble is you get stuck in deadline mode. So you put in your shift at work, with that deadline ethos or mindset, then you come home and you're eating dinner like you're on deadline. You're reading bedtime stories to your child as though you're on a deadline when you're not, right? And that's a lot of what this slow revolution is about. It's about a wake-up call. It's reminding us that often we have more time than we think, and often we can slow down. And not only can we should, because we'll end up doing things better and enjoying them more. The trouble is that we've wound ourselves up into this frenzy where we're convinced ourselves that every moment is a dash to the finish line, and that if we slow down, we are losers, we're boring, we're stupid, we're lazy, we're unproductive, we're roadkill. When in fact the opposite is true, that by slowing down judiciously at the right moments, finding the right pace of the moment, so sometimes fast, but also other times slow, you're going to thrive in whatever it is you're doing, at work, at home, whatever it is, you will do it better and enjoy it more.
I like in one of the bios I read, I think you referred to yourself as a rehabilitated speedaholic.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of what I was saying before, that I was a car-carrying roadrunner, and I'm no longer that, thankfully.
Yeah. What was the first reaction when you started trying to convince people to slow down? This is the way to go. Where was the pushback? Where did it come from?
Well, I noticed right away that there was, at a personal level, there was skepticism, because people thought, well, you're so fast, how can you be slowing down? So I had to get over that hump first. But then when I went out into the world and started talking to people that didn't know me about slowing down, I bumped up against the same resistance. And it was this: on one hand, people would say, yes, I need to slow down, I am chasing my tail, I am living like a headless chicken, I'm touching the surface here, I'm not really living. But, and then the big but would come in. The but would be, I can't, there's no choice, we have to go fast, I need more time to go faster and faster. So I came up against that a lot. The people understood in their guts, right, in their bones, that slowing down would be good for them, but they felt they couldn't. And part of that, I think, is the taboo against slowness in our culture, that slow is a dirty word, it's a 4-letter word, it's a byword for stupid, lazy, all the bad stuff. And I think that means that even when we are yearning to put on the brakes and we can feel it right in our bones that it would be good for us to put on the brakes, we don't do it because we feel ashamed, we feel guilt, we feel afraid, we feel inertia. We've just lost the habit of slowing down. So I felt there was that kind of resistance I encountered right from the start. But that was a long time ago. Now, I feel like I'm not only pushing against an open door, the door is open now. Even in the workplace, in the fastest industries on the planet, people are waking up to the folly of doing everything faster. So you go to Silicon Valley, you go to Wall Street, wherever, and you'll find companies, savvy companies, looking for ways to help their staff tap into the power of slowness by slowing down, by not getting overloaded, by not looking at 35 screens at the same time, by having time away from work, striking a balance between working and not working, all those things that are at the core of the slow philosophy. You're seeing them now finally being embraced in some of the most hurry up corners of modern life.
I'd be interested, how old was your son when you were reading him that story at fast speed?
I guess he was probably around three, maybe 3 or 4, three probably.
So, and how old is he today?
He's now 27, so he can read his own stories.
Yes. Is he a speedaholic?
No, in fact, actually, in some ways, people say, "What are you most proud of?" And I think it's the fact that my children are both practitioners of slow. And I've never been a get on a soapbox, here's my lecture with 9 points and telling my kids what to do. I think I've always tried to lead by example and hope that they will pick up this slow wisdom by osmosis, and they have. Both of them live in a way that I wish I had lived in my 20s, because in my 20s, like between the tortoise and the hare, I was the hare with a capital H, like 5 things at once, rushing, never stopping. My kids are not like that, right? You know, they're engaged with the world, they're successful by most people's metrics, they have happy lives, they have interesting jobs and wide social circles and do fun stuff, but they are not rushed, either of them. It's kind of lovely, actually. In fact, I saw something the other day when my daughter was back. She's 24. And I came downstairs. She's sleeping in her old bedroom. I came downstairs. She'd already gone to bed. And I noticed that her cell phone was outside the bedroom door on the landing, right? It wasn't in the bedroom. And I thought, there you go. I don't think I can't remember ever saying explicitly, keep your phone out of your bedroom, but they just have absorbed it along the way.
One of the expressions you use that I love about cell phones and whatnot, I think you call them weapons of mass distraction.
Yeah, exactly.
That is an apt way to describe, because you just look out the street, you watch people, they're all walking like this now with their heads down, they're disconnected from the world, connected through some artificial device, and they're not paying attention to see the green grass or see the flowers, the bugs, the birds, the leaves on the trees. They've lost that connection with nature.
Yeah, it is. And I'm not a Luddite, right? I mean, I have a cell phone and I've got a MacBook. These things are useful tools. The trouble is that we have become enslaved by them, and we have become addicted with a capital A. We find it impossible to look away. And that, as you say, just erodes our experience of life, of the world. We end up with fragmented attention. We end up disappearing down electronic rabbit holes, when really what life is all about is what's happening right here, right now. It's not what's happening on TikTok a million miles away, according to somebody else's algorithm. And I think that more and more of us are realizing that. And one of the things that makes me optimistic for the future of the slow movement is that these days, this is one of the things I've noticed has changed in my 20 years on this crusade to slow down the world, is that at the beginning, most of the slow movements were spearheaded by people, I would say 30, 40, 50, that kind of age, up. Now it's teenagers and 20-somethings who are at the forefront of challenging the cult of speed and looking for ways to put on the brakes, even with their gadgets, right? I just did an event in Paris with a European-wide network called Offline Clubs. Started in Amsterdam a couple years ago. Now it's everywhere across Europe. And what it is it's clubs. They organize events where late teens, early 20-somethings come together in a public space or a museum or beside a monument like the Eiffel Tower, whatever it is, and they just sit together and read books, like real books, physical books, for a couple of hours. No one brings a phone. They just sit in silence and read, and then afterwards they have conversation, they chat, they listen to the birds, whatever. And I did an event for them which was 5 hours without any phones, with everybody under the age of 30, and just, I mean, I in my own life live a lot of time without my phone, so it's not new to me. But seeing that generation lighting up, just completely absorbed in their books and then conversation and looking into each other's eyes and being present, just my heart sang. I came away from that thinking there is hope for mankind yet. And to see the young on the cutting edge of this is just so uplifting. Just one other quick example is a new social ritual, which I'm not sure if it's arrived in Canada yet, but you see it a lot in London, England, which is where I live. I'm from Alberta originally, but I live in London. And it's called stacking. And it works like this: when young people, so 20-somethings, teens, whatever, go out for a coffee together or whatever, they sit around the table, everybody piles up their phones in a stack in the middle, and whoever grabs their phone first to send a message or look at TikTok pays the bill for everybody, right? And it's just a fun way of saying, we have this moment here together now. We will never have this moment again. Why ruin it by trying to be in several moments at the same time? And the fact that stacking is the invention not of baby boomers or my generation, what am I, Gen X, who we grew up without screens. This is the digital natives who are coming up with these hacks and techniques to get off screens. That for me fills me with hope, right? Because it shows that the pendulum is swinging back from the extreme to somewhere in the middle, where we use these gadgets when they're tools to be productive at work, when they're toys to have a bit of fun, when they're platforms to connect us socially when it's useful, and then the rest of the time turning them off, right? And being the real world with other real people together. Because that's ultimately what makes us happy. It's what makes us fulfilled. It's what makes us human. Yeah, those slow moments together.
When you were here in February speaking in Medicine Hat, you talked about a program that you did in Australia where
Yeah.
you actually went with a family for 30 days and broke them of their device habits. Walk us through how that went with that.
Yeah, well, the program is called Frantic Family Rescue, which gives you a flavor of what it was. So I was given very fast, wired families for a month, and I had to slow them down. And it was daunting, right? Because these were really, really fast. Everything was moving at 100 miles an hour. Everybody looking at screens. But in every case, it worked to some extent. And the one case that really stood out for me was a boy called Theo, who, when I met him on day one, was a complete gaming addict, right? He was playing 6, 7 hours a day. His parents had just thrown in the towel. They'd given up. And I sat down with Theo just while he was playing and chatting to him, and I thought, I don't know if I can bring this kid back from the brink. Right? I hate the phrase, he may be a lost cause, but I thought to myself, I didn't say it out, I thought, this kid may be a lost cause. What am I signed up here for? Over the space of 30 days, Theo did 180-degree turns. What I did for each of the families was I arrived on day one with a gadget box. So every gadget in the home, game consoles, tablets, phones, everything went into the gadget box for a month, no use of gadgets. And that was a pretty traumatic day for the families. There were tears that day, and I don't just mean the kids, right? A couple of parents were shedding tears, so they thought they were going to see their phone for a month. But at the end of the month, the same thing always happened. The families would rip open the box, pull out their gadgets, and start using them again, but they would use them with a much more sensible, wise, balanced, slow spirit, right? Choosing when to use them, and then the rest of the time turning them off. And even Theo, he said to me at the end, he said, you know what? I do like gaming, and I'm going to carry on gaming, but I'm not going to game the way I did before. I'm not going to game in the evenings and the weekdays. I'm going to game a little bit on the weekends, and the rest of the time I'm going to do the things that you, as in me, gave him. Because what I did during the month was I didn't just pull away the Game Boy for 30 days and leave him cold turkey. I filled up that time with slow activities. So I reintroduced him to a bicycle he'd been given at Christmas and had never ridden. It was just lying there in the garage. I got him the stuff together to start building a little fort in the back garden. They had a big yard. It was in Australia. Introduced some other kids in the neighborhood, his age, that he kind of never seen or met before, and they started playing soccer and things in the street. So he fell in love with all of that childhood stuff that defined my childhood, and I'm sure yours as well. You know, that kind of free range childhood where you went out in the morning, your mom would boot you out, you'd be out you only came back at lunch if you needed something to eat, or when it got dark and your mom would be shouting, or maybe your dad too, shouting, come home, dinner, and you go back and play again. You'd be playing street hockey, car, all that stuff. All those things that I say them now, and I'm smiling ear to ear, because that was just joy. That was what made childhood what it was for me. That's what made it worth, childhood worthy of the name. A lot of children have lost that because we have professionalized parenting, and we have turned childhood into a dash to perfection, right? Where kids are just rushing around with endless extracurriculars, everything, all structured activities, lots of screen time, tutoring, homework, not allowed out alone. Everybody's so afraid because, there's this culture of fear among parents. You feel like you open the door and you look outside, and everywhere there's a pedophile or a drunk driver, or just so kids are wrapped in cotton wool and bubble wrapped and don't get a chance to go out there and climb trees and get a scraped knee and all that kind of stuff. So that's what Frantic Family Rescue in a way was about, was reintroducing that vibe, that energy of childhood that's been childhood since forever, until really the last generation, maybe the 90s when it began to peter out. Trying to bring some of that back and finding that, wow, kids love it, yeah, and they thrive on it. And parents love it too once they get over the kind of anxiety about, oh, I'm doing something different, or this feels old-fashioned, or not like what the Joneses are doing, and da 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 da. But once you get a taste of it, and you see your children's face light up when they're just playing freely, and you hear that music and their laughter when they're jumping through a sprinkler rather than doing Kumon tutoring, that you just feel it in your bones as a parent. This is right. This is good. And you talk about the porch, right? That's your
Yes,
porch.
that's the philosophy of our porch. People
Yeah.
need to have neighborly conversations on the porch.
And I was thinking before we got on, I love the idea of a porch. I grew up in Edmonton. We didn't have a porch. I guess we had a deck at the back, but not a porch at the front. But the spirit of the porch, to me, is very much the spirit of slow, in a sense, because the whole point of a porch, you don't rush on a porch, right? The porch is not somewhere where you worry about productivity or optimizing your experience on the porch. The porch is where you stop being a human doing and become a human being, right? It's a place to be, to go deep, to pause, to reflect, to connect with other people, just to watch the world go by, right? And I just think the porch is it's a beautiful metaphor for a lot of things that I'm talking about when I talk about the joy and the power of slow. I think a porch is what a wonderful place to channel slow, is a porch.
Yeah, well, that's why we thought this would be a natural fit to have a discussion with you about this. I'm curious, have you ever touched back with those people in Australia to see if they had any relapses? Let's pause for a moment so we can share some exciting news. We're proud to announce that our work here at Bring Back the Porch is getting noticed. From October to the end of January, our videos and reels viewed more than 1 million times. Some of those viewers could be your customers, so sponsoring Bring Back the Porch is a great way to get your message in front of them too. If you'd like to support our work here at Bring Back the Porch, we ask you to go to our website at bringbacktheporch.com and follow the links. Thank you for your support.
I fell out of touch with most of them because this was a few years back now. But I am in touch with one of the families, and they carried on doing. No, actually, no, that's two of the families, and both of them carried on doing a lot of the slow things themselves afterwards. So some of it did stick, definitely. There was one family who were very problematic, and I'm not sure. I fear for what happened to that kid, but I probably shouldn't go too deep into the details.
Well, perhaps you made disciples of them and they're spreading the word in Australia. One of the other things that I really liked when you were speaking here in Medicine Hat was you talked about the importance of a family dinner and putting the devices away and having time to talk about your day.
Yeah. I think when people talk about what can I do to slow down family life and to connect with those deeper rhythms and connect with myself and my children, a family dinner it's low-hanging fruit, right? It's the thing that families have done for thousands of years. That's, the English word companion comes from the two Latin words, con pane, meaning with bread, because it's precisely when we sit down and break bread together that we are at our most close. And it's when you take away the phones and turn off the TV and it's just the family sitting around the table, that's when those deeper subterranean connections begin to flow. That's when you see and hear each other. That's when you feel heard. It's when you listen. And it's also when children learn how to, make an argument, how to disagree, how to, be in conversation, how all those social skills that employers everywhere are telling us are withering on the vine. The sitting around the table is the ultimate workshop for building up social acumen as well. But that's a great thing in and of itself. But I think the real benefit, the real magic of eating together is how it builds those deep, strong bonds, right? And let's face it, not every family meal, every minute is harmonious, right? Sometimes people are ill-tempered, there are arguments, sometimes someone needs to get sent away from the table to the naughty step, right? But that's part of life, right? Life involves conflict, friction, disagreements, people bumping up against each other. And what better place to rehearse all of that, to try it out and test it and poke into it and learn how to navigate it than with the people who matter to you most, the people who love you most, who hold you most closely, your family, right? And it's the ultimate safe space for learning how to be a person in the world, I think, is a family dinner.
When we talk about time, time waits for no man, it's been said. You have, I think your last book in 2018 is called Boulder, Making the Most of Our Longer Lives. Can you talk a little bit about what that's all about?
Yeah, well, that's about reimagining and reinventing aging, right? Because it seems to me that my earlier work is about tackling the cult of speed. With Boulder, I am tackling the cult of youth, taking down what I describe as the ageist industrial complex, which tells us constantly that aging is a bad thing, that it's a curse, it's a punishment, it's a disease, it's a form of failure, that younger is better, that being older means being written off everywhere from the boardroom to the bedroom. And the truth is that that is nonsense, right? That, of course, things change as we get older that we don't like, but many things stay the same, and a lot of things actually get better, right? This is the kind of good news angle that I'm bringing to the table here. That every age has its pros and cons, and every age can be wonderful, but only if we embrace it, embrace the present without pining for the past or shrinking in horror from the future. Only if we embrace aging as a process of opening doors instead of closing them, only if we embrace it as an adventure. And that's, I guess, the thrust of that book, Boulder, is to say, whatever age you are, own it, own it, and then go out there and make the most of that moment, right? Go out there and show the world and yourself what you can do. And that applies to whether you're 25, 35, 65, or 105, right? Because every chapter can be luminous, but you've got to, step up and say, yeah, I am this age, I'm proud of it, and let's roll the dice and see what I can do with it.
As you travel around the world and your speaking engagements, do you find a culture that is more open to the slow movement thought than others, or maybe others are more resistant?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I first began researching this idea of slow and comparing across cultures, I expected that I would end up with a league table with the top country, first, second, third, fourth. But I found that it was more complicated than that because the virus of hurry really has infected every country. So even countries that on one hand will have strong, slow traditions, like you think of Italy, for instance, right? Italy is a country famous for its food culture, long meals, sitting around the table, slow food. The slow food movement started in Italy. On the other hand, if you've ever driven on an Italian highway, you know that the Italians can go way too fast sometimes as well, right? So I think every country is a mixed bag, and I always feel that the best approach, the best solution is to look around the world and say, okay, I see that country is, that doesn't work for me there, but this might work for me in my country or my province or whatever, Alberta, Canada or something, and try and learn from wherever. I do think, because this is a time where the United States is making a lot of headlines for all kinds of reasons, right? I do think the United States, maybe it's particularly resistant to the idea of slowness, maybe more than most places. I mean, China as well is just roaring along in a speed vortex. But the United States has a traditional idea of itself as a kind of frontier, restless society. They're the one country in the OECD, the Club of Developed Nations, that doesn't have statutory vacation. Right, there's a real hustle ethos in the U.S. that I think, even as a Canadian, we realize is not as acute and extreme in Canada as it is in the U.S. So, I guess you start off asking, is there one country that's more resistant? I mean, I think the United States, in some ways, is definitely more resistant than many Western countries. But then, of course, you will find slow traditions in the United States as well, right? I mean, there's a whole tradition of yoga and there's massive meditation. And also the Americans are very religious, right? There's a lot of church going, and church, that whole community that springs up around church, being with other people, day of rest, reflection. I mean, prayer is the ultimate act of slow. It's shutting out the sound and fury of the here and now and going deep, trying to find something bigger than yourself. Those are slow traditions, and I would say the Americans certainly do a lot more than that than Europeans do on average. So again, mixed bag, I suppose, is the answer.
Carl, I want you to talk a little bit about your website. You have lots of resources there for people to discover.
Sure. Well, a good place to start actually is I have a link tree which has all of my links on it, and it's just my name. It's carlhonoré.info. And on that, you'll find everything from all my books. I've got a couple of tips books. Like one book is just all tips on how to slow down. Another is how to slow down with structured activities over 30 days. That's called 30 Days to Slow. I've got digital courses. I made a course for TED, TED Talks. I've got a couple of TED Talks. So my TED Talks are up there as well, one on slow, one on aging and longevity. I made a TED course called How to Slow Down, which is actually up now online, and it's free, so anyone can do it. So that's a fun place to start, I'm finding, for people who want to dip their toe into the slow pond a little bit. So carlhonoré.info, way more than anyone could possibly ever want to know about me and my work is up there. It's all there in one place.
Carl, our time is up here, unfortunately, but I have enjoyed the conversation, and I thank you for sharing your time with us on Bring Back the Porch.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Hey, this is Brian again, and I'd like to ask you to do a favor. We can't do this work without people like you, so if you can, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about Bring Back the Porch.